Thank you for your presence. So I just remind you, for those who just joined us just now, there will be an interpretation in 5 languages, 4 languages, and most of the speakers will be speaking in English. So if you need a translation, please choose the bottom of your screen, and we will begin shortly. Again, this is a webinar, a collaborative webinar of the JPIC and as well the Talitha Kum. Our webinar topic for today is nonviolence and human dignity, an integral ecology perspective. So, like I mentioned, we're about more than 300 registered participants. So hopefully they'll join with us. So we're about 80 people right now. So we are very grateful for your presence and participation in this important conversation. I would say this is very, very important topic that we really need to have this conversation, deeper our conversation as well as our connection. But before we begin, let us place our time together in God's hands, in God's presence, and open our hearts and to listen and to learn and be inspired. Please allow me to invite Sister Miss Mary from the JPIC group to lead us in opening prayer. So Sister Miss Mary, please lead us a prayer. Thank you.
Let us begin with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Today we gather united by a common conviction that every person possesses inherent dignity. The conflicts we witness, the suffering of vulnerable people, the degradation of our environment, and the divisions within societies remind us that violence is never isolated. Likewise, every act of peace, every gesture of respect, every effort to protect life creates ripples that reach far beyond what we can see. I invite you to place one hand over your heart. Our world is sustained when human dignity is respected and creation is protected. Let this simple gesture remind us that peace begins within each person, grows through relationships, and transforms societies. Let us pray. God of life and peace, teach us to recognize the dignity present in every person. Help us reject violence in all its forms. Strengthen us to be builders of justice, dialogue, and reconciliation. May our reflections today inspire concrete actions for the care of people, communities, and creation. May we become witnesses of hope in a wounded world. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Sister Rosemary, for leading us in prayer. Again, thank you for joining us this webinar, and a warm welcome to everyone. So on behalf of the Talitha Kum International Network and our co-partners right now from Sowing Hope for the Planet, an initiative of the Justice or JPIC Commission of UISG and USG. So I'm really delighted on behalf of the Secretariat as well of the JPIC to welcome all of you. I'd like also to acknowledge of the presence of our Talitha Kum International Coordination Committee, which is right now is Sister Annette, Sister Dialini, Sister Kayula, and others. Because I haven't seen the screen yet, but I'm sure they will be present. And of course, as Father Vincent, of course, Sister Malipar, to be with us today. So representing all of us, representing all continents. We are very, very fortunate for this dedication and collaboration, and that may continue to strengthen our shared commitment, of course, to justice, peace, and human dignity. As Sister Mary shared to our prayer, that as we gather as people of faith, of goodwill, that we are shared, but I believe that every person has dignity and must be respected, protected, and valued. Of course, in a world marked by violence, conflict, exploitation, environmental degradation, and human trafficking, this is our conviction becomes both a challenge and, of course, also a call to action. So through our mission, we witness daily the impact of violence on the lives of many people, especially vulnerable people, women, children, migrants, and those living in situations of poverty and exclusion. So at the same time, we witness the courage of survivors. Our sisters on the ground, our people on the ground, this witness of the resiliency of the communities and the transformative power of solidarity. So this is experience that we remind us that non-violence is not simply the absence of violence. It is transformative strength that heals wounds, care for survivors, restore relationships, and open paths towards justice and peace. And we hope that today also we will be integrated this in this aspect as we hear our keynote speaker for today. So the perspective integral ecology invites us as well to recognize that everything is interconnected. Human dignity, care for creation, social justice, and peace is deeply linked. When people are exploited, creation suffers. When creation harms, the most vulnerable suffer first. So promoting human dignity today therefore requires us to care for both people and our common home. This vision resonates strongly with our recent encyclical of Pope Leo XIV, the Magnificat Humanitas, which calls us to safeguard human dignity and build societies rooted in justice, unity, dialogue, and common good. So the Holy Father invites us to choose a future where human beings are never reduced to objects, commodities, or instruments of power, but always, always recognize a person created with dignity. Today, we are honored to begin a reflection with our keynote speaker, which is Mary Dennis. She will be introduced later on. We will share valuable insight on the relationship between nonviolence, human dignity, and of course, the urgent challenges facing our world today. She's a very good friend of us, of course. So following with her, there will be a presentation also. We will hear from our inspiring testimonies and experience of our grassroots networks from Africa, the Middle East, from Lebanon, as well as in Latin America, from Mexico. So these voices from the grassroots reminds us that hope is alive wherever people choose compassion over indifferences, dialogue over division, and solidarity over exclusion. Again, on behalf of Talitha Kum Network, I encourage you, of all of us, to listen with open hearts and minds, to learn from one another, and to reflect on how we can become agents of nonviolence and guardians of human dignity in our communities and ministries. Today, there will also be an opportunity that we can share our experiences in a small breakout session, as well as the Q&A at the end of the session, almost to the end of the session. So at this point, I'd really take this, thank you all for this journey, and may our conversation today inspire us to strengthen our commitment to justice, peace, human dignity, and care for our common home. Thank you again, and wish all the fruitful and inspiring webinar. Thank you so much. Let me again hand over this panel to Father Vincent. Father Vincent is the co-secretary of JPIC. So she will be introducing our keynote speaker as well as facilitating the webinar itself. Again, over to you, Father Vincent.
Thank you, Sister Abby, for your words of introduction. Also for Sister Vice Mary for your prayer. And when we are going to listen to the presenters, if the participants have some questions, you can write them in the chat. The Zoom team, Sister Denin and Go, will note down. And these questions will be answered during Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Now I have the privilege of introducing Mary Dennis, the keynote speaker. She is a secular Franciscan, a mother of 6 children, and a grandmother too. Despite these family responsibilities, she has done a great thing for the Church. She is a key person in the founding of the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, and she was named Pax Christi USA's 2022 Teacher of Peace, former staff member of the Maryknoll Missionaries, and served for 15 years as Director of the Maryknoll Office for Global Concerns. She is a holder of Master's degree in Moral Theology from Washington Theological Union and recipient of honorary doctorates from Trinity Washington University and Avernia University. And she has authored, co-authored, and edited around 9 books. Now, I have the happiness to invite Sister Mary Dennis to deliver the keynote address. Welcome, Sister.
Thank you very much, Father Vincent. It's such a gift to be with all of you. So let me begin with just a very brief quote from Magnificat Humanitas. While the tumult of confusion is all around us, goodness grows silently from the earth. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" In December of 2021, scientists launched the James Webb Space Telescope, a massive instrument that is peering farther than ever into the cosmos, revealing new information about our early universe and indirectly observing evidence of dark matter. With the advent of modern technology, even before artificial intelligence, from the Hubble and the Webb telescopes to micro and nano technologies, we are being exposed to mind-boggling information and breathtakingly beautiful photos of what is happening both under our feet and at tremendous different distances in outer space. So, for example, we know that neighboring trees have a hidden communal life, helping one another through their root systems, either directly by intertwining their roots or indirectly through fungal networks that serve as a sort of extended nervous system connecting separate trees. We also know that we are all stardust, literally. Franciscan Sister Ilia Delio says, "We are born social and relational. We yearn to belong, to be part of a larger whole that includes not only friends and family, but neighbors, community, trees, flowers, sun, earth, stars. Deep in our DNA, we belong to the stars, the trees, and the galaxies." Even without the challenge of artificial intelligence in recent years, humans have been experiencing a complete transformation in our understanding of our place in creation. Cosmic consciousness is affecting who we are, how we live, everything we do. The ground has shifted. The context for every dimension of life is different. At least some of us who were dominating and extracting are learning to live with and respect the whole Earth community and the cosmos. That sounds a lot more positive than the facts might warrant, but the seeds of deep transformation are planted, and if we humans are going to survive on this planet, they need to be carefully tended. In other words, some of the rest of us are beginning to experience what indigenous peoples have always known about our relationship with each other and with the natural world. In her lovely book, Braiding Sweetgrass, indigenous botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, "Each person, human or not, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them." At the same time, also beginning to come into focus is an astoundingly widespread interest in nonviolence as an orientation promoting human dignity and a universal ethic that decidedly stands against all forms of violence, from the violence being inflicted on the Amazon or on 48,000 or so species facing extinction, to the immense violence facing migrants and indigenous peoples, from the cataclysmic violence of war and nuclear weapons to the violence of human trafficking and racism. We are beginning to realize that the unbridled pursuit of resources essential to the production of consumer goods, including computers, smartphones, batteries for electric cars, and other so-called green technologies, is an egregious form of violence toward the earth and toward the local communities dependent for survival on access to clean water and healthy land for growing food. At the same time, there is a glimmer of sanity on the horizon. I believe that it's the work of the Holy Spirit. It may be hard to see, but it's there. We know the stories, and we should tell them more often. Think of the powerful nonviolent witness of indigenous water protectors in Honduras, in Peru, in Brazil, of democracy advocates in Myanmar and Guatemala, also in Minnesota and New Jersey, the women of Afghanistan and Iran, Talitha Kum, young people in Nairobi, and so many others. One of my favorite images is of a sign at the entrance to the Tent of Nations farm near Bethlehem in the West Bank, a farm that is under constant threat from violent settlers. The entrance to the farm says, "We refuse to be enemies." This nonviolence to which we humans are increasingly attracted is a spirituality and a transformational way of life. It is also a set of powerful practices for negotiating conflict, untying the knots of systemic violence, and promoting right relationships among humans and with the whole Earth community across all walls and all divisions. Michael Nagler, who is the founder of the Meta Center for Nonviolence in California, says, "Violence is a tendency that pulls us back away from the recognition of unity. Nonviolence pulls us forward toward the recognition of unity. Nonviolence is connected with higher consciousness or love. Nonviolent behavior is central to who we humans are. Nonviolence is not only at home in a new story of unity, it is the new story and the way to get there." Nonviolence is much more than a political strategy. It is a lens through which we see and interpret life, a set of virtues and principles for personal and social transformation. Nonviolence is personal, interpersonal, social structural, and ecological. We are so clearly at a crossroads. On the one hand, we humans are increasingly aware that our lives, our very beings, are intrinsically interconnected with the rest of creation, with the entire cosmos. On the other hand, we know in our souls that the quagmire of violence in which we are wallowing is a dead end, literally. We desperately need a new stage on which to continue enacting our story, our stories, a new nonviolent paradigm in which to dwell, as the prophet Micah says, in peace and unafraid. But what actually does make for just peace? What will help us move as a human community from a paradigm of perpetual violence to a paradigm of nonviolence? The United Nations, the World Bank, governments, the Catholic Church, a plethora of peace-building organizations, and many others have been closely examining these critical questions for years. They increasingly emphasize nonviolent strategies to prevent or interrupt violence and to address the underlying causes of conflict before it becomes violence, and nonviolence as an essential characteristic of the new society we will build. Anthropologist Doug Fry, who is part of Columbia University's Earth Institute Sustainable Peace Project, has examined the characteristics of peace systems, neighboring societies that don't make war on each other or anyone else. He has identified characteristics like interdependence, non-warring values and norms, symbols and ceremonies that reinforce peace, superordinate institutions, the skills of conflict management, and visionary leadership among those communities that are promoting peace. Fry's extensive research shows that war and violence are not ancient or inevitable, that peaceful societies do exist, and he underscores the importance of having an alternative vision of a world without war, without violence. But that world will not magically appear. Fostering a future of durable care for our common home and for justice, equity, dignity, and peace for all will require an unprecedented global movement and innumerable local campaigns to mobilize sufficient people power to challenge and dismantle the massive, unjust structures that threaten the earth and its inhabitants, and to nurture instead life-giving systems that meet the needs of the planet and its people. Such a transformation will require creative imagination and what Dr. Martin Luther King called the fierce urgency of now. We cannot put this off. All around us, we are actually seeing amazing examples of nonviolence, of love that struggles for justice with fierce determination, but without violence. But a commitment to be nonviolent, to build nonviolent relationships, again, with each other and with the earth, and even more so, to engage in nonviolent action for just peace, takes tremendous courage, training, and practice. For their resistance to the destruction of the commons in their care, we know that many earth and water protectors, for example, have been criminalized, threatened, killed. For over 80 years, Pax Christi International members around the world have nurtured a deep commitment to active nonviolence. About 20 years ago, we began to collect stories about the methodology and impact, success or failure, faith connection or not, of nonviolent practices from different, often very violent contexts where our members live and work. We began to see amazing creativity, wisdom, and frequently the effectiveness of nonviolent strategies, despite the fact that nonviolent options were often dismissed as passive, as irresponsible in the real world, and were almost always under-resourced. We were tired of being dismissed as naive when we challenged violence in response to violence, especially when one of the great gifts of our age is empirical evidence that active nonviolence is a positive, constructive, and powerful force for social change. A diverse set of nonviolent approaches, from diplomacy to trauma healing, from restorative justice to accompaniment, from civil resistance to music and humor, are effectively dealing with violence without lethal force, are effectively transforming conflict, protecting people, communities, and the earth at risk, and are fostering just and peaceful alternatives. For Pax Christi members everywhere, nonviolence is a spirituality, a way of life, a deep commitment to live the values that we believe shaped the early Christian community in the first century context of occupied Palestine, where violence was a way of life. For us, the so-called hard sayings of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount are central. But the challenge is how to interpret that message in the context of a 21st century world immersed in extremely complex situations of violence. What does love your enemy mean now? Yes, at a personal level, but maybe even more importantly, what does this worldview offer to the heart of our different societies, reeling from repeated cycles of destructive violence affecting people and the planet? Nonviolence is not passive. It is not the same as pacifism, nor is it one more issue in competition with all the other issues that concern all of us, the people of faith and goodwill. It is, as I said, quite simply a way of life and a universal ethic essential to the survival of humanity and the planet. The Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, as a project of Pax Christi International, has been working to bring nonviolence from the periphery of Catholic thought and teaching to the center, to mainstream gospel nonviolence in the Catholic community. The energetic, positive international response to the Catholic Nonviolent Initiative proposal from both inside and outside the church has been really amazing. We are specifically encouraging people to learn from local experience, and that is ringing true in many contexts. We're encouraging people to learn how to live nonviolence in their particular context, because what we know is that nonviolence in the context, for example, of occupation in Palestine, nonviolence in the context of poverty or street violence in Haiti, nonviolence in response to extractive projects in Latin America or Africa, and on, will look very different. But everywhere, we continue to see the yearning for a better way, for just and sustainable peace, for integrity, for integral human development, for right relationships between human beings and the natural world. For the sake, we believe, of present and future generations, we have to replace the logic of violence in which we are mired with a new logic of nonviolence. Otherwise, we will be perpetually trapped exactly where we are right now, convinced that self-defense is only and always armed, that only weapons and military might can interrupt violence and protect threatened communities. The question is not whether to defend against a brutal military invasion, for example, but how, especially how to imagine and build a new paradigm where nonviolent options are increasingly viable and effective. The Catholic Church needs, and I believe is moving toward, a new moral framework, not a revision of the just war tradition. This new moral framework will move nonviolence to the center of Catholic teaching, even as it precisely negotiates an ethical response to the complex expressions of violence encountered in any crisis. We've been really heartened by the importance that the Vatican is placing on nonviolence as a cross-cutting approach that could shift the way the human community looks at and responds to the myriad of crises we're facing, including climate change and ecological violence. Both Fratelli Tutti and Magnifica Humanitas have moved the just war tradition to a back shelf in the Vatican, if you will, calling it out of date. At the consistory this weekend, the cardinals, according to Vatican News, will address how the Church can reaffirm today the overcoming of the theory of the just war, too often invoked to justify any war, and what practical paths might help peoples and Christian communities preserve and build peace. Pax Christi's Catholic Institute for Nonviolence was established almost 2 years ago to deepen the Church's access to information about and understanding of what Pope Leo describes as far more effective and capable tools for promoting human life and resolving conflicts. We are trying to do so for the Church, both globally and locally in a myriad of ways, including seminars in Rome and webinars, institute briefs, media outreach, and on and on. The Catholic Church, with its diplomatic presence in almost every country and at all major multilateral organizations, has a well-developed network of religious communities, universities, seminaries, local parishes, publications, media outlets, and a membership of something like 1.4 billion people, as well as rich spiritual and theological resources that could make a tremendous contribution to the development and acceptance of nonviolent approaches to a healthy planet and a more peaceful world. Nonviolence is not simply a stance or an ideal. It is a process that can actively transform the challenges we face now and create openings for life and for healing. Nonviolence is deep and wide. It is a transformational force for good that can propel a crucial historic shift in a world where the infinite worth of every part of the Earth community and every person is honored and protected. Nonviolence is the journey to a future that is itself characterized by nonviolence, when we will be joined in a splendid universal communion with all God's creatures and with the cosmic whole. Cosmic consciousness and gospel nonviolence are the signposts of a hopeful future toward which the human community is now moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister. Yours is a soul-searching presentation. It resounds in our mind. The promotion of human dignity requires nurturing the right relationship with one another and with the cosmos. Nonviolence is not simply a theory or absence of conflict, but it's a spirituality, a way of life, a practical framework for promoting a culture of care, dialogue, solidarity, justice, peace, and integral ecology. You have ended your presentation with a question. The just war theory is already in the archives. There is a legitimate right to defend one's own people. How to do this? Through non-violent means. We need to explore. So thank you very much for a beautiful presentation and inspiring talk. Now, I request all the participants to remain 1 minute in silence and to observe what is echoed in our minds. And this also can be a time for the translators to repose a little. We shall take 1 minute. Well, thank you very much. Now we pass on to the next phase of the webinar. To listen to the voices from the Talitha Kum networks. As already Sister Abhi has said, there are 3 speakers, and each one will share for about 10 minutes. Now I invite Sister Dayalini of the Apostolic Carmel Sisters and Talitha Kum Asia representative to introduce now Nairi, who is from Lebanon, and followed by this, Nairi will make a presentation. And before every presenter, Sister will come again to introduce them. Now welcome, Sister Dayalini.
Thank you, Father Vincent. I hope I am audible enough for all. It's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Nairi Orselanian, a social worker, a safeguarding specialist based in Lebanon, with extensive experience in humanitarian and social development programs. She worked closely with vulnerable communities, including refugees, migrants, women, children, and initially displaced persons, promoting protection, psychosocial well-being, and social inclusion. As a member of Talitha Kum in Lebanon, she contributes to initiatives focused on preventing human trafficking, raising awareness, strengthening safeguarding systems, and empowering women and youth through community-based interventions. Her survivor-centered and right-based approach brings valuable insight to our discussion today. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Nairi. A warm welcome to you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Let me tell you something. Being in the webinar today, it was somehow challenging because as a Talitha Kum Lebanon, today we start Women Empowerment Project in South. So it was the first day in Jizin. It's far from Beirut for 2 hours nearly. We went very early morning and we finished at 1 p.m. Beirut time. All the way I was thinking, what a coincidence that I am in a place where a lot of violence. And I told them to the women today, I told them how much we believe in them. And that Talitha Kum works during the war, preparing those women for the peacetime. Being a social worker and working especially with women and a girl, it's my mission. And for that, I had the Bob Pierce Prize, International Prize, and as a member of Advisory Council for World Vision Lebanon. It's a great honor to join you today. I'm honored and I'm so lucky to be part of the Talitha Kum network in Lebanon since 2019. I'm coming from the country where the violence it's nonstop. Let me tell you, since 2024, without telling you that since I born in 1983, at that time there was a war. 1990, I was a war child. 2024, 2006, until now, we are living violence. And this conversation on nonviolence, human dignity, and integral ecology, as a representative of Talitha Kum Middle East network in Lebanon, in our context, these concepts are not abstract ideas. They are lived realities that shape our daily work with women, youth, migrants, displaced families, especially lately, and vulnerable communities affected by economic hardship, social instability, displacement, and consequences of conflict. At Talitha Kum, Lebanon, we understand human trafficking, exploitation, and violence as interconnected with wider social economic environment and spiritual challenges. For us, protecting human dignity means recognizing that violence against people and harm to our environment are deeply linked. Integral ecology invites us to see each people, each person within the context of their relationships, community, culture, and environment. Especially that in Lebanon, we live in a society where you can find different beliefs, different faith groups between, and we as a Talitha Kum, we have a lot of input with the society where they are Muslims, especially the Shia areas in the Beirut suburb and in South. For us, protecting human dignity means recognizing the violence against people and harm to our social environment are deeply linked. Integral ecology invites us to see person within the context of their relationship, culture, environment. It reminds us that caring of people requires caring for the condition that allow them to live with dignity, safety, hope, belonging. For our response is therefore rooted in prevention, awareness, empowerment, accompaniment, and community engagement. At Talitha Kum, Lebanon, we work excuse me, we work within individuals and communities who are vulnerable to trafficking, at risk of traffic, or already living in situations of exploitation and human trafficking, especially after 2017 Beirut blast and the war. We recognize that the trafficking doesn't happen in isolation. It is fueled by conflict, displacement, poverty, social exclusion, gender inequality, and the breakdown of the protective social networks. Through partnership with parishes, church-based organizations, local associations, universities, and youth group, we work to strengthen protective communities across Lebanon, especially in the villages and vulnerable areas. Especially lately in 2026, our most of the projects and works are in rural areas, in the villages, where they have a high number of the Christians, especially in the south border villages. We organize awareness sessions, advocacy initiatives that help people recognize the sign and risk of human trafficking and exploitation. We engage young people through schools, universities, scouts, camps, and summer festivals, creating a space for dialogue, leadership, and social responsibility. We believe that empowered youth become agents of nonviolence and defenders of human dignity within their own communities. Women's empowerment is another essential pillar for our work. Through focus groups, community activities, individual accompaniments, we support women in strengthening their resilience, rebuild social connections, recognizing their rights and capacities. In shelters hosting displaced population, lately, it's been 2 months, we are working focus group project with women's in one of the shelters in Beirut, people who are displaced from border village from the south. We are working focus group for the women. Our work takes on a particularly meaningful dimension in collaboration with Jesuit shelter for migrant workers. We facilitate separate focus groups for women and men, creating safe spaces where participants can share experience, rebuild trust, address tensions, and foster mutual respect and coexistence. We also work with Lebanese families displaced from border villages, accompanied women, youth affected by the conflict and displacement through dialogue, psychosocial support, individual follow-up, which is one of the most important and one of the unique in the area of Middle East service that we give individual follow-up, social and psychological, and collective activities. We seek to restore dignity, strength and solidarity, and nurture hope. in hopeless villages. Despite the ongoing violence and instability affecting Middle East, and especially the escalation of conflicts in Lebanon since 2024 and continuing through 2026, Talitha Kum Lebanon has never stopped the mission. When violence intensified, we remained present. I love the idea. I love this idea that in all the moments, from the scenes of the COVID, from the Beirut blast, as a Talitha Kum, we were there for every and each one. We never stopped empowering women socially and economically. We never stopped supporting and engaging young people as the leaders of change. We never stopped providing one-to-one follow-up and accompanying for women and youth in need of protection and support. Even in times of crisis, displacement, we continued our works. Our commitment is rooted in a simple conviction: human dignity can't be suspended during times of conflict. On the contrary, it is precisely during the period of violence and instability that the risks of human trafficking and exploitation increases, making prevention, one-to-one follow-up, and community-based protection more urgent than ever. This experience have taught us that the non-violence is simply the absence of conflict. Non-violence is an active commitment to listening, inclusion, participation, justice, and compassion. It means creating environment where every person is seen, heard, and valued. It means transforming fear into trust, isolation into belonging, and vulnerability into empowerment. As a faith-based actors, we believe that human dignity is inherent and non-negotiable. Every person, regardless of nationality, gender, migration status, age, circumstance, deserves protection, respect, and opportunity to flourish. Our communities became more resilient when we work together across generations, cultures, and sectors. Today, more than ever, we need collaborative approaches that place human dignity at the center of our actions and recognize the interdependence of people, communities, and our common home. We remain committed to building a culture of care, strengthening local capacities, and promoting non-violence response that empower individuals and transform communities. In contexts affected by conflict and displacement, preventing trafficking begins with a commitment to remain present. When we protect human dignity, strengthen communities, and choose non-violence, we create the conditions in which exploitation cannot thrive. I want to thank you. I know that we are always in your prayers. Just want to say human trafficking prevention begins long before the exploitation occurs, and this is what we do in Lebanon. It begins when communities choose dignity over exclusion, dialogue over division, and solidarity over indifference. Thank you again for each and everyone for your time.
Thank you, Nairi. You have presented your experience, your convictions, and the work through the text, through your voice, through your face, and from your life. As you said, you are a war child, trying to protect the victims of war. I request the participants just to take 30 seconds and just examine what is the call that is given to us for promotion of non-violence, human dignity, and care of the common home. And those who want can also write in the chat, which will take 30 seconds. Once again, praying for the people of Lebanon and assuring our solidarity with people as well as with the community of Talitha Kum there. We move on to the next speaker, Sister Maria Dolores. I invite Sister Dayalini to introduce her.
To continue this webinar, it's now my pleasure to welcome our second speaker, Sister Maria Dolores Ramirez. Sister Maria Dolores, a Mexican member of the Carmelite Congregation of the Sacred Heart, has served in Mexico, Quito, Ecuador, Houston, Texas, USA, and Colombia, and now again in Mexico. She is currently a member of her congregation's general team and actively collaborates with peace building and justice initiatives in Mexico. Deeply committed to accompanying families searching for missing loved ones and the mission of Talitha Kum, Sister Maria brings a wealth of pastoral experience, compassion, and commitment to human dignity. We warmly welcome you, dear sister. It is over to you.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Good morning to every person who is connected at this time, being and making bridges of communication, communion, and hope in different parts of the world with a sense of community, of family, and living this sorrow fraternity. I will begin my sharing with a question. When and where do we see it necessary to turn on a light? Precisely when we experience darkness, when we recognize that the light is missing, is absent. In the world, we are going through great darknesses, and it seems that we are getting accustomed to living like that. South America is no exception. We experience displacement, migration, violence in the family, political violence and corruption, extortion, kidnapping, gender violence, and murders of women, people who disappear, slavery that is called human trafficking today, organized crime, among other crises that we are facing. For these and other reasons, we sadly see that South America is one of the most violent regions of the planet, without forgetting the pollution of rivers and sea. That too is violence and corruption. How can we row against the current? How can we shape peace, dignity, respect, and appreciation as a base for nonviolence? This question makes me think about the song Let Us Row, which says, let us row our face against the wind with the courage ahead of us, with a people among our fingers. Let us row with a knot in our chest, dreaming that on the other side we are nearing another beginning. This beginning will emerge little by little in every network that stems from Talitha Kum in Latin America, Rahamim in the case of Mexico. The accompaniment of migrants, people who wish to get out of situations of violence and extreme poverty, and walking in solidarity with families searching for their disappeared beings. They are part of the light that was already turned on. As consecrated life, many times we are evangelized as mothers and fathers that search and travel through the country, searching not only for a family member, but the others that we need. Here we realize that solidarity that emerged in the midst of tragedy, violence that came about when the son, the spouse, or the child that did not return home, and no news, and there were no news about them. Here, in the midst, some light emerged. The path traveled with families in search has led us to weave with other civil organizations and government or non-government organizations, with the church and other churches. This weaving is to ultimately weave the social fabric, recognizing that reconstruction starts in the heart of every human being. It led us to recognize our own violence and also the main resources and necessary gifts for the transformation of reality. 4 years ago, the National Dialogue for Peace emerged, where Rahamin is an active part. From that experience, I'd like to share that the families in search also joined. One of them said, I feel that the mothers in search are both victims of violence, but also agents and managers of peace, because we don't want other young people to be desaparecidos, and we want all of them to come back home. And the groups of mothers in search have joined this work of prevention against human trafficking and prevention against the disappearance. Some of the mothers being part of this network. Here, they are making a difference, living stricken by violence, going from violence to living as agents of change, especially among teenagers and young people. And for them and for youth, it's been meaningful to listen to testimonies of these mothers in search, to realize and understand, realizing every story of life leaves them with a message they keep in their heart, which they remember every day as a light of prevention. It makes them attentive to the networks of death that want to grab them as soon as life begins. More and more, Talitha Kum and its richness and diversity in Latin America walks in the certainty that peace can be nurtured when we go back to the words, gazes, and attitudes in the face of aggressions, as small as they may be, when a response that doesn't damage emerges. On the contrary, it dignifies. I'd like to share the testimony of a mother who's part of the network. Since the day that she received a button with a message of freedom from slavery, she wears it every day on her clothes, and she's been a testimony when she walks on the street, when she takes the bus, when she goes to a meeting, or when she goes to a medical appointment, when she says that together we can support dignity. In these words, I put the voice of our companion Lupita Ruiz. I'm searching for my son with the same love with which God gave him to me. My name is Maria Guadalupe Ruiz Lopez. I'm searching for my son, Jose Mauricio Diaz. He disappeared on October 20th, 2023. My son left his home on his way to work and never came back. He lived in the city of Querétaro. He had a good job. He told his wife he was going to work and never came back. Mauricio is the only son that survived. I had 7 pregnancies, and only the 5th one was successful, and that was my son, Jose Mauricio. God gave me the joy of having a son in life and to be fulfilled as a mother. It was my greatest longing to hold each of my creatures, but I couldn't make it. I could not complete my weeks of gestation. And on the day that my only creature was born, it was like a dream come true to put him on my arms, to see him grow, smile, study, manage a career, work, and unfold his talents, including folk dance. Being a father of 2 beautiful sons, which is the only thing I have in my life, my grandchildren. To date, more than 2 years have gone by since October 2023. I've known nothing about him. I don't know whether he's alive, if he's in this world, if he's hungry, cold, if he suffered an accident, if some people took him away. I don't know if he's on the street or why he never reported back since that time. What I do know is that minute after minute, I entrust them to God, to the Virgin, our Mother, who I asked to intercede. She also had a single child and took care of him with so much love and suffering when he was sentenced to death and ended his life on a cross. For me and for all the parents who are in search, it's been very painful to travel on this path. It's a very difficult situation where it is necessary to be supported. Where can I find my strength to stay on my feet with half of my strength? This strength is what I get it from holding on to Christ in this on this path of pain. Faith makes me think that on the day I least expect it, my questions will be answered. My son, where are you? I've traveled through several instances. I took the necessary steps. I've met with very kind people who do their work beautifully, but also with people who are different. I hope that the authorities will do their job, that they fulfill their commitment they made to get where they are, protecting the people, taking care of the people and the entire society. Days, weeks, and months and years go by with no traces of my son. However, on this path, I do not feel alone now. Even when the strengths are gone, I feel accompanied. I think that at this time of humanitarian crisis, God is reminding us that we are not alone. I have received the company of Talitha Kum in Rafamim, Mexico, and I am part of this network where we can say, we've heard the cry of my people, and in the face of this cry that we hear and see not only in the news, we also receive a call from Jesus. I think that he is with every family to encourage, accompany, and journey. As I listened to Lupita, I thought of the gospel where Jesus says that the kingdom resembles a loss and something found. And if a woman loses one of her 7 coins, will she not turn on her light to sweep her home and search until she finds it? And as she finds it, she gathers her neighbors and friends and say, "Rejoice with me because I found the coin I had lost." Mauricio, and each of the treasures that we are missing are more than a coin. They're part of the life that God granted in order to be happy. Mauricio is part of Lupita, from the first beat of his heart. It is what is most valuable to her, and it was taken away. Nobody knows where he is, who he is with, and how. That's how more than 100,000 families are in Mexico. The woman from the gospel gathered her friends and neighbors to celebrate her finding. Lupita and more than 100,000 mothers are calling us to search. They invite us to be empathetic as a society, to be in solidarity, to be brothers as the church, to not be indifferent, to give the best we have in order to build peace, to find those that were missing, so that there will be no more desaparecidos, so that the evil and hunger for power can become hunger and thirst for the kingdom, where we see each other and treat each other with respect, care, and affection, like a family to whom creation was entrusted, so that no one would be needy. And I conclude with this. The crisis that we are experiencing in our country and the world is very complex. We need you, we need everyone to search, find, and celebrate. As long as there is indifference and judgment, we will continue feeling pain and ingratitude. Rahamin, Talitha Kum, and each one of the networks are part of that light. We are part of the gaze of goodness. We are part of the refuge that embraces and strengthens. That is how we've experienced it. And even if it's very little, it is like a drop for the thirst that humanity needs. Let us continue walking toward peace with dignity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Maria Dolores. The Talitha Kum of Latin America walks with the Marys, Josephs, mothers and fathers who are searching for their children who have disappeared. What are we called to do to prevent the violence against humanity that makes people to disappear? We accompany you all in our prayers and in our solidarity. Now I request Sister Dayalini to introduce our next presenter, Annette Bongo.
It's a privilege to introduce our third speaker. Dr. Annette is a legal practitioner and a social justice expert with 19 years of experience. She currently serves as a board member of the Independent Policy Oversight Authority, a state agency that promotes human rights, accountability, and professionalism within the police service in Kenya. She is also a member of Faculty of Law of the University of Nairobi. She is the immediate former executive director of Kitio Legal Advice Center, a national legal empowerment organization. Dr. Annette has keen interest in the areas of program management, law, human rights, gender and women's rights, children's rights, transitional justice, clinical legal education, and access to justice. She has written research papers in these areas. We are honored to welcome you, Dr. Annette. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sister Dailini. I hope I can be heard. When I was asked to speak about these issues around human dignity and nonviolence, I thought I would begin from what is familiar and bring in the rights perspective of these issues. And from there, looking at the obligations that states, for example, have towards their people when it comes to matters relating to human dignity, protection of our environment, as well as nonviolence. And I began first by looking at the international framework when it comes to the right to human dignity. And this right to human dignity has been protected widely, not just in international instruments under the UN, but also within the African Union. And a number of African states, including Kenya, where I come from, have ratified these particular human rights standards that recognize that human dignity is actually the foundational right for the enjoyment of all other rights. And all other human rights derive from the right to human dignity. And it also establishes that human dignity is an inherent and inviolable right, meaning that it cannot be taken away from any individual. And also then poses an obligation for governments to ensure that they prevent abuses and facilitate basic physical, psychological, and spiritual needs for their people. When it comes to the right to nonviolence, again, it is a right that is framed through the inherent right of life, the protections around torture and cruel treatment, and also the right to peace. And I think I had one of the speakers talk about that the absence of violence does not necessarily mean that there's peace, that you can have contexts where you have negative peace. And I think for us here in Kenya, we're in a situation where we are in a context of negative peace where everything seems okay and we just have pockets of violence. But then really there's a lot of conflict and violence that is simmering beneath the surface. And so I think so the foundational instruments, both within the African continent and also internationally, speak to the right to human dignity, the right to nonviolence, but even more importantly, that if you cannot respect life, human life, equally, then you will not respect the need to protect the environment. And so also the right to protect a clean and healthy environment is also a right that is provided for under various African instruments and also various international instruments. Now, from there, I will want to speak to what we have in our own context in Kenya. And we have a very robust framework that actually adopts what we have in international instruments and also in the regional instruments. And our constitutional provisions ensure that everyone is treated the same, ensure that there's a mechanism that if this right to human dignity, right to nonviolence are actually violated, that there is an enforcement mechanism that communities can use through our local courts. And the court has the powers then to make respective orders that will ensure that they are safeguarding human dignity, nonviolence, and also protection of the environment. And also we have specific rights that speak to human dignity. Human dignity has been specifically recognized, and freedom from torture, freedom from cruel and inhuman or degrading treatment, freedom from slavery that also then speaks to issues around human trafficking, are rights that are said to be absolute rights, meaning that they cannot in any way be limited by our governments. And obviously the right to protection from violence, the right also to a clean and healthy environment. But then even more importantly is that our constitution, that is a supreme law, also provides for special protection for very vulnerable groups such as women, children, youth, and all the members of society and persons with disabilities, requiring that they be specifically treated with dignity and respect and also protected from harmful cultural practices as well as exploitation, and provided with the necessary education or support that they require to live a life that is a life of dignity. When it comes to our environment, our constitution also requires that the environment and natural resources are used sustainably, not just for the current generation, but also for future generations, and that we should have sound conservation and protection of ecologically sensitive areas, including ensuring that we are efficiently and productively using our natural resources. And also it requires that the state respects the environment and provides for mechanisms as well for the protection of the environment. And we have seen in many cases communities organizing around these rights that are provided for in our constitution to protect their right to the environment, to protect their human dignity, and also to protect their right to nonviolence. And one case in point involves a case that involved a community within an island in the coast region of Kenya who opposed a coal mining project. And they opposed this because they felt that it was not going to be sustainable for the environment in which they live in and the ecological system of where they live in, considering just how sensitive their environment was. The court actually listened to the complaints that were raised by these communities and stopped the coal mining project. And so we have indeed success stories of communities engaging with these particular provisions of the Constitution and bringing cases before court, and some of these cases actually getting orders and governments actually complying with the order that have been mentioned. The other issue also relates to in terms of using these provisions has been collaboration between civil society actors and also actors that are within the government space to come together and find solutions and bring communities together. And we've seen this has been done by RAT Kenya, which convened a lot of civil society actors who are working around trafficking in persons. And through these collaborative efforts, they were able to provide psychological support as well as legal and social care for victims and survivors of trafficking within the country. And we've seen that this particular network of civil society actors has continued to do this kind of work. So as I've said that we have a very robust framework that communities and civil society actors and governments are meant to comply with. And however, when we look at the lived realities of how communities in our country are living, or we are seeing a very different story, and that these protections that are provided for are yet to be fully realized. And that despite the constitutional guarantees, we are still seeing cases of femicide, intimate partner violence still occurring, child abductions, still cases around trafficking in persons occurring, and police excesses, where you have incidences of police where communities maybe are organizing and in protests. And sometimes these protests are peaceful protests, but you're finding that the police may use excessive force. And in this way, we lose lives when these demonstrations and protests are carried out. And in fact, this week, actually, we are remembering as a nation the protests that we had 2 years ago that brought our country to a standstill, where we had young people who are mobilizing for change, get into confrontation with the police, and we lost the lives of some of these young people. And so we have this kind of incidences that are still occurring, even though we have a very robust legal framework and obligations that both states and private actors are meant to implement. And so the question for me was, then what do we do next? What needs to be done so that we actually see these guarantees really being enjoyed by the ordinary person. And I'm sure that the situation that Kenya is in is not unique. It's a situation that many other African countries are in, especially African countries that are not in active conflict. And so for me, what I felt needs to be done is one is to build a culture of solidarity, of humanity, of human rights. And within Africa, we talk about Ubuntu. So the spirit of Ubuntu, a spirit also of accountability and constitutionalism, because a number of our constitutions, as well as for other African countries and Kenya as well, speak about these same values that will promote human dignity, protection of our environment, and non-violence. But then when it comes to practicalities of actual implementation, we are not seeing this happening. And so we need to start by building a culture that will actually transform the way these rights are realized. The other issue that I felt would be important is how do we sustain advocacy efforts and sustaining these advocacy efforts, meaning bringing civil society actors together and where they can collaborate with state agencies as well, so that there is full implementation of the constitutional standards and human rights standards that are provided for both regionally and internationally. And I think the network that was being convened by RAT Kenya is a good example of how advocacy can be done collaboratively. And this advocacy should not be advocacy that is done once in a while. It should be sustained effort until we actually see change. So not giving up until we see what we are asking for is actually implemented. The other issue also is about legal empowerment of communities. A lot of these communities, and we are seeing also in our country, the youth have been able to mobilize themselves. And these social movements are coming from rights awareness and rights education that has been carried out in our country from way back in the 70s. And so I think continuous legal empowerment of communities so that they're able to know their rights. Once they know their
Dr.
rights.
Annette, you can shorten it. Thank you. We are running short of time. Yeah.
All right. So once they know their rights, they're also able to use those rights so that they can bring change to the communities that they're in. So I think legal empowerment of communities is a good way forward to seeing how we can bring the full realization of these particular rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Annette. Sorry to shorten your presentation, but what you shared with us is very, very inspiring. Through your experience and knowledge of human rights and legal practices, you are able to safeguard the people and the planet Earth. And you are raised the right question: how can we continue this work? This is a question to all of us. Now, sisters and brothers, now we are going to have a small group discussion. Now, the technicians will form language-based groups for group discussion. The questions are placed in the chat, as well as it will be also displayed in the screen. The questions are based on 3 topics: ethical practice, non-violent approach, and integral ecology in action. Each group can choose one topic. Each topic has got 2 questions. And if you have time, you can also take more than one group. And we will have just 15 minutes for group discussion, and then you can come back. When you come back, there is no necessity for presenting a report from each group, but rather those who are ready to share something, what they have learned, can come forward to share. Also, if you have raised questions in the chat box, the Zoom team will present these questions to the presenters. And if there is still time, you can also raise certain questions to the presenters. Thank you. Now the questions I read only in English. Ethical practices promoting human dignity. In your context, what ethical practices have to be adopted to ensure dignity and respect for the vulnerable persons? Second, how can we as a faith community empower the marginalized people to participate in community social life? Second question, nonviolent approaches. On this topic, what forms of violence, personal, structural, social, economic, ecological, affect the people of your place, and what type of non-violent responses can address them? B, can you share an experience where non-violent approaches such as dialogue, accompaniment, inclusion, community solidarity, etc., transformed a situation of conflict? Third topic, integral ecology in action, caring for people and our common home. How do you see the connection between care for human dignity and care for the environment in your place of life or ministry? What practical action or initiatives need to promote integral ecology? So these are the questions. Now the technicians will make us into groups.
So if you can answer to the poll, you have to select your language and then click send, because we have still many people missing from these answers. Okay. For how much time would you like these groups to last?
10 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so the groups.
So welcome back. Now, so welcome back.
Here.
Hope you had some time to discuss with each other. Now, the Zoom team will present, Sister Danny Nango will present if there are certain questions, appreciations, all that. And the presenters can respond to them if there are questions. And after that, the participants can share what they have learned from these webinar today. Maybe Sister Denin, if there are questions, appreciations, observations.
Good evening, everyone. And there are almost for every speaker, there was an appreciation. And coming to the questions, Jacqueline is going through the questions in the chat. Meanwhile, can we ask the breakout rooms to share the discussion. Father Vincent?
Okay, very good. Now the participants can share what we have learned, what is our experience related to non-violence, human dignity, integrity of creation. You can unmute yourself and then speak.
Hola, buenos días.
Good morning.
¿Puedo hacer la pregunta?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, sister.
Gracias. Es para
Thank you.
Mary.
It's addressed to Mary.
Sí, ahí no la encuentro.
I can't
Yo
find
había
it.
colocado mi pregunta en el chat
I had placed my question in the chat,
y tiene que ver con dos términos.
and it has
El
to
término
do with two
violencia
terms. The term
como
nonviolence
una construcción de comprensión de un contexto
as a construction of understanding, comprehension of a context. And my question is
Gracias, Mary.
there. Hi, thank you, Marie. With regards to why not use the term good treatment as a change of mentality when it comes to nonviolence, since the emotional feeling that we are left with is this negative sensation about violence? And can we build, perhaps we can build better through a good treatment? Thank you.
Mhm. That's a good question. The word nonviolence is a challenging word. It's a challenging expression. So there are many ways to talk about it, and they are totally fine. We do think, however, that that the word nonviolence, not hyphenated, but the word as one word, nonviolence, it signifies in a very clear way that this is a positive action that is working against violence. So even the naming of violence is sometimes helpful. For example, often the word peace is used instead of nonviolence. But we also know many circumstances when we are encouraged to believe that we will achieve peace through violence. So, for example, in my country, in the United States, for many years, there has been talk about peace through strength, meaning peace through building up a huge military capacity. So in a way, the word nonviolence, which is actually a translation from Sanskrit, where in Sanskrit there is a practice of expressing very deep, complex ideas by the negative of the opposite. And so this word does that. It's imperfect. It's understood in different ways in different languages. But we do think so far there hasn't been a very compelling replacement, unless we're going to use a word like satyagraha, which is not well understood by most of us also. So challenging question, but at least I encourage you to begin by using nonviolence without a hyphen, because we're not saying we're just not being violent. What we're saying is that we are engaging with the violence in a way that hopefully moves us beyond the violence. So I don't know if that's helpful. It's complicated. It's a great question.
Thank you, Sister Mari. Is there any other questions?
Yes, Sister Tepo here wants to share from Botswana. So, I think it was a very good experience of sharing with others. But here, I think what we experience is gender violence in our country, personal, social, economical. And what we're trying to do is we're having some centers whereby we have people who can help to create awareness, especially with poor women, just to inform them and to empower them to know how they can fend for themselves. Because sometimes I feel I want to believe that is because of dependency on people that we think that they can help you, but at the same time taking advantages. So we have this kind of awareness campaigns, especially in our remote areas and in our villages. We also have this financial empowerment whereby the government is trying all its best that it creates some programs where women can do something so that they can bring food in their families. And this violence, I think, is a very, very strong thing among our communities here. And it goes to that point that it affects the children. So normally what we have in schools, whereby they have some counselors, can I say that, who are trying to teach young children how to have that safe space where they can share their experiences at home. And where there is a problem, that's where now people with those counseling skills can come in and try to help the children. But the main thing that we think helps is whereby now we sit together as women, as young children, sharing their experiences and having people to facilitate and help them to try to be empowered, to try to work on their own and stand on their own to try to feed themselves and avoid this gender violence. And what I like in our group when we're sharing, we're all talking about working together as team and trying to work for our communities, being there with them, especially those that we find them in our rural areas and are living in that acute poverty, that we should try by all means to work with them. Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe the Zoom team, Sister
Okay.
Denin, Jacqueline,
Yes,
if there are
yes,
questions,
we
you can
have a
present.
question which was asked by Seton Afiwa, though in French, but we try to translate in English. It says, the concept of nonviolence is like a reaction against violence. It presupposes the existence of violence in the first place. Does this mean that violence is primary and natural? Yeah, that is a question from Seton Afiwa.
I would be happy to maybe just say a word about that. No, I believe that we are discovering that although there is violence, many kinds of violence in the world, that human beings, that we humans have an instinct for community, for cooperation, for solidarity, and that sometimes we're convinced that we're naturally violent when we're not at all. But I also think that it is important to think of nonviolence as having both a constructive as well as a dimension that dismantles violence. So nonviolence does respond to violence, but it also transforms conflict in a way that often can prevent violence, that can interrupt violence. And so we do think of nonviolence as both interrupting or preventing violence, but also as contributing to a way of being that is already nonviolence. It is both destructive, interruptive, and constructive. And so nonviolence can play a role in at many different stages of conflict in order to both interrupt violence, as I said, but also to prevent violence and build something better that is nonviolent.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. And we have another question which is asked by Sister Mary, but it's in French. So I request whether our French translator, please, can do that for us. It's the last message, please.
Donc, what determines an act that is violent?
Hello, am I heard?
Can you hear me in English? Okay. What determines an act?
Yes.
What defines the violence of an act? When can we say that an act is violent in brotherly relationships? So how do you define violent acts?
That's a very interesting question, because there is a traditional definition of violence that would talk about different kinds of violence. Direct violence, that is intentional physical harm of another person or circumstance, but also cultural violence and psychological violence and spiritual violence. There are many people now who are studying violence and recognizing the many different ways in which one person intentionally harms another person or community. And I believe that is sort of the fundamental definition of nonviolence, but it is not. It is not necessarily direct violence. It can be many different forms of indirect violence, but that is equally harmful. And others may want to respond to that.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Mary.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
We have
There
very
is,
limited time.
yeah, it's okay. There is a person, though it's not a question.
Okay.
Laura said that in my heart, it remembered me of the text of John 11:25-27. I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe in this? I remember this is when the case of Lebanon was being shared. This is what came up. Do we believe in that? Thank you.
So thank you very much. Now we invite Sister Mamalifa, the Executive Co-Secretary of JPIC Commission, to make a wrap-up and conclusions.
Yes, thank you very much. Before I do my wrap-up, I just wanted to contribute to the question that Mary was responding. And I want to say that whichever word we use, it depends on what we put behind the word. Even the word peace, I used to think that peace means peace, really. But through my studies, I come to see that we have two definitions of peace, which was mentioned here. We have the negative peace, and we have a positive peace. So since then, when I use the word peace, I ask myself, which peace am I talking about? So whichever word we use, it depends on what we put behind the word. And I can do things in the name of peace that is very violent and very just. And we can just see the present war that is going on in Iran. It's in the name of peace. Is that real peace? So I think we have to always, I have to put what I want behind the word. and not the word itself. This is what I just wanted to add. Thank you. So, dear friends, we have come to the end of our today's webinar, and we have received valuable information, valuable testimonies from our keynote speaker and from those who have given us testimony from their life experiences on the theme nonviolence, human dignity, and integral ecology perspective. Marie, our keynote speaker, has pointed out so many important points, valuable points that can help us in our daily living. And I will not be able to repeat all of them, but one that struck me from the very beginning when she started her conversation was the word of scripture. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? Even in the midst of the violence that we see, there are many new things that are happening. Do we perceive them? Another thing that struck me was when she talked about neighboring trees communicating between themselves. So if trees can communicate between themselves, what about us humans? Communicating among ourselves, communicating with other creatures. Because communication, through communication, can solve a lot of conflict. Because sometimes conflict arises from non-communication. So I think this is a very important point for us. There is a point on, if we humans can survive, we must care for creation. We must care for nature because we ourselves are nature. And if we neglect part of us, if we mistreat part of us, how can we survive? We cannot survive. All things are interconnected. And this idea of interconnection was brought up in the introduction of Sister Abby. So we can see that a lot of violence is done, not just to humans, but also to nature. And we see this violence in the extractive industry, extractivism, in the name of technology. We want to make life easy for everybody. We all like to have the latest phones, but we ask ourselves, at whose expense? It is at the expense, not just of nature, but of local communities. That is violence. So what can we do about that? How can we change our lifestyle in a way that can bring life instead of violence? That can contribute to real peace instead of violence. And she talked about what? Violence pulls us away from unity, but non-violence brings us to the center of unity. And this is what we want to do. We want to build unity among humans and also between humans and nature, because we are part of nature. So, Marie, thank you so much for all the wisdom you have shared with us regarding non-violence. May these words transform our own lives, our way of relating, and communicating with others and with creation. May the Lord bless you and continue to use you as an instrument of non-violence and of positive peace. Thank you. I would like to thank the three people who gave their testimonies on the ground regarding the theme we are dealing with today. Nairi, Dr. Annette, and Maria Dolores. Some of the issues they raise are very painful, but in that, we can also see something positive. Something positive. It raises a lot of awareness and it is making people to take action to transform the negativity that has happened so that everybody can live in peace. Thank you for your concrete witnesses. And I thank Dayali for introducing those who have given their testimonies. May the Lord bless all of you. As I mentioned, Abby told us everything is interconnected. Whatever, and we have is a call for all of us to start looking at things as interconnected. We need to go out of this dichotomizing of things. And one of the things that is causing a lot of violence is the dichotomization of issues. If we see them connected together, we will have a holistic approach that can really lead to life. And for me, this is something that I have got from this webinar. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Sister Mamalifa. Now I request Sister Anna Maria to say the closing prayer.
And I would like to thank the translators and all those who have contributed in one way or the other. Thank you all.
Anna Maria, would you like us to share for you the slides, or are you okay? Okay.
Are you sharing now?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Buenos días, hermanas, hermanos. Qué bonita manera de empezar. Good morning, brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful way to start the day here in the South. Thank you for every address, for every enlightenment that we share, and we join our global community in this prayer. God of life and of peace, we thank you for this time of reflection, which has allowed us to recognize the deep interconnection that exists among all your creatures and our common house. Thank you because you remind us that we are part of a single community of life called to live in harmony, in justice, and mutual respect. Help us grow in the awareness that any form of violence hurts human dignity and damages the creation you've entrusted to us. Give us the courage to be builders of peace, promoters of active nonviolence, and defenders of life in all its forms. May the words shared today remain not only in our mind, but may they transform our relations, our decisions, and our commitment to the most vulnerable people and the earth, as the gospel teaches us. Guide us along the path to an authentic civilization of love, where dialogue wins over conflict, hope overcomes fear, and the care of creation becomes a visible sign of our love for you. May your spirit inspire us to be sowers of reconciliation and guardians of human dignity and witnesses of a lasting peace and just and lasting peace. Thank you.
So thank you very much, all the participants and presenters, technicians, translators.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Jackie, it's good to see you there.
Ah, yes, Sister Laura. Yes,
Thank
yes.
you very much.
Yes, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye. Thank you. Thank you
Bye.
very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you to everyone. It was
Very
nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Marie Reven. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sister Laura, Ana Maria,
Yeah.
Kayula, Annette.
Thanks, Abby.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we are here in Thailand.
Hello.
Pray for us. Thank you, President. Thank you,
You.
Sister Jacqueline. Thank you to my team.
Thank you, everybody.
Muchas gracias. Yeah. Until we meet again, July 29.
Yes, I'm here. Anna Maria.